Hello, it's me again, Mark Angko, and I'm here to talk about OAuth, and I'll start my presentation.
Hello, good morning. This is my presentation on OAuth, and I'm Jordan G. Anko. So, in the internet, you probably are a member of one or two social networking websites. And since you communicate using the services provided by your social networking website, you probably also want them to communicate with each other. So, why would you want that? Well, you'd probably want to get contacts from one site to another so that you won't need to put them back again. And then also get pictures from a picture or file storage sites to be posted to another site so that you don't need to re-upload anymore. Also, you would, you would also want to show posts concurrently on different sites. So good thing there's OAuth. So what does OAuth mean? What does OAuth give? OAuth provides you the things that I listed earlier, all of them without giving out your username and password. Now I'll walk you through a demo site provided by universe.com, which is the official getting started or demo site given by OAuth. So in here, they'll show a quick demo of how OAuth is used. So the story here is that Jane is from, from Scotland vacation, and that she has photos uploaded to Fajr, which is a photo sharing site which she wants for her grandmother to also see. But then her grandmother doesn't have an internet connection, so she plans to use a online printing service named Beppa. So clicking the demo. So in here, you can see that Jane uploaded two photos in Fajr, and that she opens a new browser and goes to Beppa. And in Beppa will ask where her photos are located. So she put in 5G as her photo sharing site, and she will then be redirected to 5G.com. So this is like OpenID, but the difference with OAuth and OpenID is that OpenID allows you to log in to sites, the whole site, while in OAuth you will just be given access to certain content. So I'll press here continue, and then as you can see here, Beppa is requesting access to your private photo albums. It's the private photo albums that Beppa could see. So you can press approve or deny. In this demo, there's nothing that will happen if you press deny. But in implementations, you can put in some other directions like a restricted page or some other warning or error printouts. So in here, I will press approve. So as you can see here, Beppa will then access your photos in 5G.com, and then there, Beppa will then now have access to the photos that have been uploaded, and then here you can now then press print. Now I'll be showing how OAuth works. First, let's get into some definitions. So first, the service provider. The service provider is the one who is hosting the resource that you wanted to get or to share, and the user is the one who has an account on the service provider, and the consumer is the one who wants to get data from a service provider. So again, the protected content is the data that you wanted to get or to share, and then the consumer key is a value that gives the identity of the consumer to the service provider, and the consumer secret is a value or a password that authenticates that the consumer who has it contains this or is the owner of this key. So OAuth authenticates consumers and service providers by using tokens. So what are these tokens? First is the request token. The request token is the one that is used by the consumer for authorization by the user. So first we will get a request token from the service provider, and then lets the user authenticate it so that he can then elevate it to an access token, which is a value passed by the consumer to the service provider to get the data that it wanted. Then the token secret is the value within each token that just provides some sort of password or a hash that tells that the token is owned by the consumer. So here are the request URLs, which is where the tokens are passed. First, the request token URL. These are within the service provider. This is where the consumer asks for a request token, and then it's processed by the service provider. The user authorization URL is the URL wherein the unauthorized request token is passed on by the consumer for user authentication. Then next is the access token URL. It's the URL wherein the authorized request token is passed on to the service provider, and the request token will then be processed, and then will respond with an access token. Now I'll be discussing the typical workflow of a consumer accessing data from a service provider via OAuth. First, the consumer will ask for a token from the service provider via the request token URL, and the service provider will process the validity of the consumer key and the consumer secret. After this, the service provider will give the consumer with an unauthorized request token. The consumer will then ask for authentication for the authorization of this request token, and the service provider will redirect the web browser or the user to the content access page. The content access page is where the place wherein the user can log in and grant permission to the request. With this, the service provider will then provide or give the consumer with an authorized request token. This request token can then be elevated by the consumer to become an access token. When the service provider validated this request token, will then provide the consumer with the access token. This access token is included with the request of the consumer for data. So this request contains the type of data that the consumer wanted and the value of the access token. The service provider will then process this and provide the consumer with the data that it requested. So this is the typical workflow of a consumer accessing data from a service provider via OAuth. OpenID and OAuth provides users better security in logging in and communicating between different websites. So it doesn't provide security, but also easier use and integration of the data shared by them. If you want to know more, you can go to these websites, and also you can hit up the comments to ask questions about my presentation, and I'll try to answer them. So thank you.